Hello, welcome everyone back to another episode of Energy Unleashed. My name is Suzanne Worthley, and I'm with my partner Kim Hess today.
Hello,
Well,
Suzanne.
today and every day,
Today
right?
and every day. There's that
What,
connection.
what would I do without you?
Oh my gosh, what would we do without you?
It is just such a pleasure. Truly, oftentimes I don't tell Kim a whole lot about what we're going to talk about because I like her, um, I don't know what, organic reaction.
Yeah, I was gonna say organic reactions. My what?
That face like, huh? We were talking a little bit earlier though about this one, but I think it's going to unleash or go deeper as we go because this is really an interesting common denominator I see as a practitioner and actually I guess as a human in terms of fields. And I really want to talk about the actual well, let's start here. When we talk about energy, oftentimes we talk about the chakras, right? Oh, my chakras, are they all open? Are they in balance? Are they working together? Blah, blah, which is awesome because when they are, I'm, running great and everything's perfectly, in alignment. But what we don't talk so much about is the fields, the actual templates of the auric fields. And we can actually put it together like a puzzle. If I have a root chakra, I have my very first etheric body field. So we have the gas, if we want to say it that way, and then it templates like an actual tank or a bubble or whatever we want to say, egg around us. As we progressively go up the body in our chakra system, our auric fields go out. So we, in essence, have a field for every chakra, okay?
Mhm.
But generally speaking, they come down to four fields, really, because they interpenetrate. So when we're talking about the auric field, oftentimes we say, I have a physical field, I have an emotional field, I have a mental field, and I have a spiritual field,
Mhm.
okay? So as a practitioner, it's really important for me to look at the fields as an overall bubble or egg that holds in their gasoline, much like a gas tank. That's imperative for me to look at. But within healings, it's oftentimes interesting because I will find rips or tears within one of the fields, but not necessarily the other. So, for example, maybe in my, let's just pick a spot, maybe in my hips area where my beliefs are. Maybe I'm really finding a tear on the right-hand side of my physical field because I had some issues with beliefs around growing up with my father, but I have no tears in my emotional, mental, or spiritual field with that because maybe it was a really physical interaction with my father. Are you
Mhm.
following?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Or maybe it's not a physical one and it's mind screwing from my father because it was more gaslighting manipulation. So it's going to be broken in my mental field, but not the other three. Sometimes it'll break throughout all of them because the break is so big or so bad. So I think what I would like to talk about today is kind of interesting in that the mental field is really getting its butt kicked right now in most all of humans because of the mind manipulation. Now we're talking about where the manipulation comes from to affect the field. We are in a time with politics, with anything to do with, fear state, financial, medicine, you name it right now. And the
Mhm.
so-called dark agenda, negative agenda, controller system, whatever you want to label that stuff, is doing its best to keep us in a mental fear state.
Mhm.
And I really want people, if they choose, to really think about this. Where are you holding your fear? And how do you process that fear, especially if you are in the mental field? That's the one I want to talk about because the mental field will look like in your body and mind and presence. We call it the hamster wheel or the gerbil wheel or whatever. Okay. It's that round and round and round and round and round and round and round in our brain,
Mhm.
and we think that that's doing us some good.
We do think that.
Yeah.
And by the way, the patterns and some of the things that go through our mind, we don't even pay attention to a lot of times,
No,
right? It's
because
just
we're
like,
not present.
yeah,
You're
right.
just on the merry-go-round,
Mhm.
right? And when that thing is going around and around and around and around, we can call that rumination. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm just going to ruminate. I'm just going to keep churning it through, churning it through, churning it through. And we can get seriously uptight and emotional. And this is the funniest thing I want to bring, not funny, haha, but funniest thing that I want to bring forward client wise. People will come into my office and they'll think that they're super emotional. I'm so emotional. but literally speaking, they're on overdrive in their mental field, not their
Oh,
emotional field.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense because it's continually running, which makes you just crazy. Like,
Yes.
and I'm sure it affects many parts,
And
but
I'm panicked. And this is
Mhm.
this is actually anxiety more than anything, because when I'm stuck in that mental field and the break is there, it's affecting all of those other fields. Remember, they interpenetrate and
Mhm.
it can break through them all and it can cause all kinds of trouble. But the actual brokenness of the field really is held in the mental field. And
Mhm.
this is really what's happening for a lot of people right now, because this is the mind control programming. That's what they want. They want the days want us to be scared, because then why? Because we're submissive. And then we, bow down to the savior program. Then it's like, oh, someone else is going to fix this for me. I don't take my self responsibility, blah, blah, blah. So I want to point out a couple of things that's happened recently with some clients. It was interesting. I was working with, I oftentimes work with couples, and it's fun for me to be with a couple, especially if they're new together or if they're having trouble actually for many years. I guess it doesn't matter, because most of the time, couples have different ways to process the mental field.
Sure.
And did you fall off your chair there?
Oh my God. What?
Really?
Are you sure?
And I was saying, I think what's so adorable about new relationships is, because this is so me, God being, well, we're both married 40, what, 40, well, how many years have we
40
been?
something.
40 something. When I first met Chuck, I thought, oh my God, he really completes me, the old Tom Cruise line.
Yeah.
He really completes me because he's so chill and he's so zen. And he thought, wow, she really completes me because she really gets things done and she really moves quickly. Those were wonderful at first, and then those turn into your biggest enemy within 4 years of your marriage, because it turns from you're so zen and you're so chill to you're so lazy and don't do anything.
Right.
We find resentments, and it doesn't even mean he's lazy and doesn't do anything, but the perception inside the mental field is
Mhm.
the yin for that yang, because I let that pendulum swing all the way over here thinking, wow, you so complete me because you're so cool and you're so zen, will automatically kick back in my mental field because I'm the one that's lacking that spontaneity and zen.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
eventually get angry at him
Mhm.
because I don't have it for myself.
Well, and I think some of that thought process is I don't get to do that because
Exactly.
I'm so busy with all the things I'm controlling and taking care of.
Right. So
Oh my
my
goodness.
my I'm so great in doing things turns for him to you controlling a wench that you just don't let anybody else get anywhere and do anything. So these will organically change into really negative aspects within relationships. And I'm not saying this is 100% of the time, but it is very common, because that's what our brain does. We twist it inside of our head and we make it something great at first, and then we get resentful. The
Oh yeah.
resentment comes because I don't have it within my own balance. It's my job to find my own zen, not response. I mean, I'm responsible, not he's responsible for
Right.
that zen.
Right.
You understand?
Oh, totally. Because I just had that feeling of, like, especially like you've got people coming over or you've got stuff going on, and you're like, really? You're watching a football game? Don't you understand what has to happen before everybody gets here? I mean, that whole, like, you
You
just
didn't
go
even
into
wipe
this,
down the
like,
bathroom. Yeah.
good Lord, like, how could you let people come to the house when it's not perfect? Whatever.
Right?
And just being so angry at him that by the time people got there, I was not great. I was not the happy
And then
hostess.
then all the companies like on pins and needles, because they're like, what the hell, right?
What's this energy going on in your house?
Yes. It
Yeah,
is exactly what I'm talking about. So
yeah,
it, right? Well, you get
yeah,
it. It's
yeah.
really hard. So let's go back to the field. So the field is holding the mental belief system. Let's use you right there.
Mhm,
That Kim has to be perfect and the house have to look perfect, because the presentation of who and what I am has to show that.
mhm.
So that's the angst that you're going to ruminate over, and you're going to look at every corner and you're going to find a cobweb and you're going to see that that towel is dirty, and you're going to see all of that on warp speed, out of control, because the mental belief under there is what's driving your action.
Yep, totally,
Okay.
totally.
Whereas his mental belief is like, let me crack another beer. It's all fine. Who cares? And which
And
one
you
is
know him
right?
really well, don't you?
Well, in this case, I do. So which one is right? Neither. Which one is
Neither.
wrong? Neither. It just
Mm-mm.
is what it is. And really understanding the other fields behind that can help in the moment going, okay, this is a mental reaction to a belief system. Is this a true belief? Maybe it is because that's what I grew up with. Is this a true belief now at this age in this context of where I am? And the only way you're going to find the difference is to drop down in the body to the emotional field in the body. That's your sacral chakra in your gut. And it's further, let's see, it's further in on your auric field.
Okay.
So down in the body, in on the field. So I'm ruminating here. If I pull into my field and I start to examine, wow, what's the true feeling here when I want the house to be perfect? The true feeling is judgment. I'm not good enough. My
Yeah.
worth is dependent upon
Worth.
if my towels are clean.
I need some
And
validation,
yep.
you
And
know?
is that a truth or
Mhm.
not? So the work is to find neutral, switch gears, go to the different field and examine, oh, the true feel is not the same as the think feel.
My gut just went crazy as you're talking about that. Like, it's interesting because I don't think that belief is different for me now than it used to be of controlling and, making sure everything is great. I am not quite as insane about that,
Mhm.
but there's still something there
Oh,
as you're talking about it. Oh
there's
my
still
God.
something there for me too.
Yeah.
And I teach it and do this all day for a living. And I am fully responsible for still being a mess in that area because what we do, and I'm going to take it even further, is we equate the action or the non-action in this case to my worth and my love quotient.
Mhm.
So if you love me enough, you get your ass off the couch and help me,
Right.
which means I'm not lovable. And all of that is false. But again, these are layers. So we have never been taught as humans to go through our layers of our energy fields. We're
Mhm.
just taught to think in our head.
Man,
It's so messed up.
it's a layer after layer. You think you've worked through something and then that goes deeper.
And you're never
Um,
going to change that original belief system until you do the work to dismantle the belief system by honoring the true feel instead of the think feel. I write a lot in Confident Empath book about true feel and think feel. We think feel a lot. I love when I ask people things and they go, how do you feel about that? And they're like, good. That's not true. It was so cute. I was scanning a guy the other day who was new, and I'm like, we're going to scan your head. How does your head feel? And he goes, good. And I'm like, no, how does it feel? No, it feels like it. And he went into this whole big think thing. And I go, no, how does it feel? We had to do it 4 times before it was, how does it feel? Because we don't feel,
Mm-mm,
even within our fields, we don't like to feel. And
mm-mm.
so the only way to break the belief pattern is to get super intimate with the feel, the true feel, and then challenge the belief and break down the belief if it's appropriate, right? So
Yeah.
now I want to bring this even further and unleash this part of it. This is very difficult because when we get with partners, oftentimes spouses, we are different in terms of how we work. Most of the time, again, I pick you because you're Zen, you pick you because you're organized. That's all great and fine. But there's even more mechanics to the mental field behind that. When we have someone who is a ruminator, okay, that means that they're kind of on pins and needles going over and over, and they are still in that spaz moment. And oftentimes they will be with someone, so they're not being able to process, they're in overwhelm. Okay, so now if I'm having an argument with a partner, and I say, we need to do this and this and this with the house, or we're doing this project and we have to blah, 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 blah. That ruminator person gets overwhelmed in terms of, because what if we do it this way? What if we do it this way? What if we do it this way? So it turns into a spaz. So I get really, really uncomfortable, which I think is emotion, but it's really not. It's spaz in the mental field because it's overwhelmed. Too many choices, can't land the plane. Okay.
Oh gosh.
At the same time, oftentimes they will have a partner who is purging this out and throwing this out. Why? Because this partner needs to plan,
Hmm.
because plan makes me safe. If I have everything ducks in a row, I think I'm safe. So
Hmm.
I'm looking for validation for things out here, whereas you're stuck right here. So the energy is in two different places in the conversation. And if you don't honor my planning, or you changed plans on me at the 11th hour, God forbid, that pulls the rug out of my safe.
And then it goes to emotional, right? Because you're not safe.
Yes. Now I'm going to start to get sick and I'm going to start to get scared and it drops into the emotional field. But is it true emotion? Am I really not safe? No, I'm perfectly safe. Plans just changed. Can I handle this? Sure. But what's under that is even the beginning thing of if you would just accommodate me on how my mental field works, then I have worth. Do you see how crazy this is?
It's most of my life. Like
Mhm.
just listening to you and I'm like, wow, I just thinking about my husband and I, our relationship, and even with the kids when they were at home,
Yep.
how all of us handled things differently, through different situations, especially I could think about the holidays, when you're just
Oh,
crazy
God.
trying to make everything wonderful. But yeah,
I
I
was
could
telling
see.
I was telling a younger client today who's sort of an outer family friend ring that I was such a drill sergeant when I was younger for that. And that the kids I screamed and screamed and screamed all the time because you have to get everything perfect for the house. It was my family. Who gives a crap? But boy, back then, now I could give a crap. I mean, it is a learning process. This is learnable. This is unlearnable. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
And so that's why I like to bring these forward in terms of energy, because this is just energy. Belief systems can really drive your life for years and years and years and years, which I allowed that all the way into my 30s, and 40s is when everything started to change. And now 60s, I could give a crap about anything. And so it's
Yeah.
just and it's God forbid, thank you very much that I don't care, because we can still be 80 and care. We can still
Oh
be
yeah.
90 and care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let me tell you a little side note on that. If you care that much, your death process is going to be a whole lot different than letting it go now. So these are things that we really want, because that death process in that field again is going to hold all that angst. And
Hmm.
that field has to dissipate eventually when we're in the death process. So get rid of this crap now so that your death process eventually will be easier.
Hmm.
Big
Yeah,
side note.
for sure. I watched my great aunt, go through that, the
Yep.
angst and the things that she held on to. It took a lot longer for her death process than
Yep.
I was comfortable. I mean, it's not my thing to be comfortable with, but it's like, oh my gosh, let it go. You're
Yep.
not taking it with you.
The
I saw,
mental field is one of the strongest in the death process to let go.
yeah,
Just,
yeah.
you
I saw
know,
a meme yesterday that it was a guy with a U-Haul at the gates of heaven. Like, you can't
that's
take it with you.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
That's funny. And if they opened the U-Haul, they should have showed big garbage bags, because it is. It's just garbage we're trying to
garbage.
shake with,
Hmm.
you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, this processing differences is something that I encourage, especially if I'm working with couples that are coming into furthering their relationship or getting married or moving into blah, blah phase. I think it's really critical to understand the flow of how our soul works. For example, if somebody is, like it is like air, oftentimes that air person can just fly on the seat of their pants and be very spontaneous. But at the very same time, air people have a tendency to be, which is me, by the way, air and fire.
Mhm.
So I have a tendency to like to plan, because there is that safe feeling of, if I kind of have it planned out, yet air is wonderful because it locks in with, yeah, but I can change my mind. So that's a really, air is about planning and spontaneity at the same time. And fire is just drive, drive, drive.
Yeah.
So, but if you've got water, that's just like, whoa, and oftentimes water people will have family belief systems of, you have to plan, you have to do this, you have to do da, 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 which is you,
That's me.
you
Mhm.
grow up with you have to,
Mhm.
but the inherent Kim energy essence is flow,
Mhm.
least resistant path. And we don't oftentimes know what our flow patterns are, or our air patterns are, or earth patterns or fire patterns are. So we just go with the belief system.
Right.
So the belief system comes from the family and the upbringing. The soul brings in the fuel. And many, many times those are in competition with each other.
I totally get that. And for me right now, I think that layers are definitely coming up in, um, I feel like I found that flow, and then all of a sudden I don't feel the flow. And it's another layer of whatever the beliefs are that
Yes.
are coming up. And it's like, come on, I want to go back to the flow. Come on, let's go back to the flow. And so
Right.
it's identifying is not easy always on what that is, right?
Right.
I think for me, all of a sudden when I'm not feeling the flow, I go very 3D. And then I'm
Yep.
like, why am I so 3D? Like, why am I not like just letting things happen like they should? Like, what am I trying to control or why am I? And so then trying to figure out what that is, that layer that's coming up, it takes some work,
Well,
to
it takes going to neutral is what it takes. And again, we, push this on all of our Vibe Tribe stuff and every podcast as much as we can in terms of go to
Mhm.
those triggers of safe, worth, and enough. If I'm triggered, it's going to go to my worth somehow, some way, whether
Yeah.
that's I'm worried about my safety or I'm worried about my enough. And so it is critical that we find that neutral place to examine it with objectivity instead of just allowing the rumination to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's never going to land the plane when you're on that wheel, ever.
No, no.
Not gonna-
And that's when I realize I'm going so far down like a path that I'm like, why am I going here? Like, what's
Yep.
the deal? Yeah.
And you're talking about a lot of really great work with yourself, which is super important. Let's even take it further out into the relationship, back to that in terms of it's critical we start to get very efficient at watching, my partner is not even seeing or hearing me right now. He or she is really seeing and hearing something different. And I had another client this week that was having troubles with that. And I said, your partner is not hearing you at all. He or she only hears the tone, the pitch.
Oh.
And the client was like, what? And I said, you will get to a certain tone and pitch in the fields because the fields are made up of frequency.
Hmm.
And oftentimes that will trigger and shut down that partner, and you're having a fight that isn't even the true fight. It's not even real. So be very aware that when you lose that partner, and we can see it, it's very subtle, but it's very real, that you've lost the connection in the eyes of that partner because they're actually often running on a template that is a memory
Mm.
or a template that is a belief or a template that is and on and on and on it goes. So these templates are holding those frequencies, and oftentimes the pitch in and of itself will do it. Why do you think that that's like not part of the negative agenda? Sound frequencies?
Seriously.
I mean, come on, there's a lot
Yeah.
of dark agenda that just puts sound frequencies out that we can't even hear, and
Hmm.
it turns fear into us. I mean, it's crazy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this mental field is something that I really would encourage people. Invite yourself to sit with it because we think we're emotional.
Hmm.
And the day that you actually become intimate with your true emotions and your true feels, you will realize that emotional and true emotion and feels are two different things because the emotional erraticness of the mental field is nothing close to the true feel of the emotion.
So much in that little statement. Like, it's so much. It's I it's I think people might want to listen to it twice
Yeah.
because it's really when you to separate the mental from the emotional from, the physical, the spiritual. Um, it's it's again, it takes a little work and it takes focus to
And
really move
again,
forward.
they're separate, but they're not because they're
Mhm.
one, because they will interact and interpenetrate.
Right.
That goes back to the whole, holographic thing of we're all one, but we're all separate. So this is super important to sit with in terms of I'm responsible for this. No one's gonna be able to be in my fields and discern that
Hmm.
you know and
Yeah.
people that sit in my office and cry and cry and cry and cry about everything because I'm so filled with anxiety and depression and I'm so emotional. I'm like, you're not emotional at all. That isn't even real tears. Those are mental tears because you're not allowing yourself the safety to go into the true feel.
Mm.
So watch yourself. If you're that one that just freaks out and goes nuts and it's all emotions, is it even a true feel? Because if you haven't done the examining in that place of neutral to go, what did I just trigger? Is this truly a feeling of non-safe? I am safe. This is ridiculous. If you haven't done any of that work, you're just ruminating think feels
Right.
that are
Right.
spewing out tears. So you think that you're a mess.
Oh my gosh.
It's
But
crazy.
seriously, the mental part of this is it's so crazy when you start to go into the neutral and you start to identify those thought patterns that just keep going on the gerbil wheel. I mean, I think that um it's it was hard to do that when I started working on myself. Because it felt like my inner voice, like I should be following my inner voice. It's not really your inner voice, it's the mental thought patterns of the beliefs,
Mhm,
that are just like you said, ruminating in there. That
mhm.
is so different than listening to your soul, your higher self voice.
Yep.
Um, when I first started hearing my higher self voice, it was so amazing because it's different. It's different than the ruminating talk track. This
Mhm,
is how it's going to be voice that I was listening to.
mhm.
Yeah,
And it feels different.
it does.
It doesn't just sound different. It feels expansive, where the other one feels constrictive.
Yeah. And you feel that in your gut, I think. I feel it in my gut or in my heart space,
Mhm.
when that voice comes in and it's authentic and it's from a love based versus the doer
Yep.
and that just this is what I need to do.
But
Uh,
if the human doesn't take quiet time to even look at what the hell did I grow up with belief systems wise? I
mhm,
mean, this is a process of going, what did I grow up? And we just did a podcast recently on belief systems,
mhm.
I believe.
Yeah.
And belief systems affect everything in our life. And most of the time they're given to us. They're spoon-fed or shoved down our throat.
Mhm,
And these become very manipulative in the way that we show up in life. And until we actually have the quiet time and the guts to sit with that and go, I don't even know if I believe that anymore,
mhm.
or I believe that to this extent, but I'm going to dump this, or there's no way that's even part of who I am at this point. These are steps that are important to take as an individual, but most of us don't even think like that,
No.
much less,
Mhm.
have the courage to do the work because this is
Right,
dark work. We don't like it, you
right.
know?
Yeah, and that's why when you start to spend time with like-minded people that are working on themselves and doing the spiritual path more, then I go out with my friends that maybe aren't doing some of that. And
Yeah,
it's so interesting to watch and listen to what is important to them, and what is driving them crazy and all the things that I'm like, I just
yeah,
I'm not in that place anymore,
it's hard.
yeah, yeah.
And spirituality is messy.
Ugh,
And I think the perspective from the outside of those that maybe aren't knee deep or eyeball deep in the work are, oh, again, Zen, wow, how cool. Actually, spiritual work is extremely difficult and very messy. And you're always on a roller coaster. There isn't, and hopefully the roller coaster just keeps getting you to a higher level of neutral every time.
mhm,
But it isn't, rainbows and bunnies. And I think that that is a misperception also. So have the courage if you choose to go into those belief systems and, dismantle.
mhm.
Most of us are scared of the scared of the scared of the scared. And it's really critical for that time alone to say, I grew up with this. Do I even believe that?
Yeah.
Do I
And
believe
it's
it
interesting
here?
that you say like that spirit, like starting to go deeper. When I started this process, my mental mind was like, yeah, you're fine. You didn't have any issues with like whatever. You didn't have, no, I didn't have, I had a great childhood. I had this, I had that. And, like you don't, you don't understand, like your mental mind
Mm-mm.
totally drives that until you can do the quiet time, like you said. And
Yep.
like for me, journaling started to bring out some things, but also, I think where it was pivotal for me was going to Peru. And the whole healing experience opened up my heart, in a way that was closed, it was totally numb and closed. It just opened up other parts of me that energetically I knew there was more. In the mental mind, I had to start to work on how do I like quiet that. And what is it that I'm saying to myself that I think I believe, and it takes a lot of time. It's not like you said, it's messy
Mhm.
and you don't even want to acknowledge some of it. because
No,
really?
because God
No.
forbid, then you're a failure, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Or that can't be true. Is that really the truth? Yeah, it's
Yep.
tough.
Yeah, it's a challenge and it never stops, by the way.
Mm-mm.
That's the fun part. I
Yeah.
love when people sit there and they're newer clients and it's like, what are you scared of? And it's like, I'm not scared of anything. And I'm like, okay, you got a lot of work to do. No judgment, but hey, total judgment.
No, it never stops, which was evident right before we started this session.
Right. Right. Okay, so again, four fields. There's more than that in template form, but really basically physical field, emotional field, mental field, spiritual field. They go farther out as the chakras go up. You can kind of play with that if you choose to start to really look at your own body. You can use your body as a map with these fields. You can start to analyze it in some quiet time or meditative time that, wow, my right shoulder is carrying the world. This is my male side. This is my speaking my truth. I mean, it's a great way to look at things, but extend it into the fields of the aura too. Wow, is this a belief? Is this a mental hold? Is this a spiritual hold? Which is another thing too. We've got these beautiful pieces that put us together like a puzzle. And if we learn how to examine the pieces, we can get a better picture of the whole picture, right? We get a better idea of the whole picture. So play with that if you choose to. There's tons of information, lots and lots of stuff on my website that's free regarding the consciousness of the chakras and the fields. The Confident Empath has a ton of information on what you can do to release all of that. And so that's another place that you can find some help. So I just think it's great work. It's not fun work, but it is in the long run really brings ease and grace to your life, right?
It does. I think that while it's not great while you're going through some of it, the feeling, the freedom and the feeling of lightness and how much that changes, yourself, it's worth it.
And I think to wrap it up, the ultimate goal for me as a human that does this as well, much less a practitioner, is find those skill sets, practice them, yes, and understand that it is never ending. But the goal for me is to find neutral faster and paradigm shift quicker.
Mhm.
That's all it is, because we are always going to be challenged in the collective fields. So finding neutral faster, identifying the triggers quicker, and then shifting that paradigm with ease and grace is those windows are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And for me, that's the goal as a human.
Yeah, which I think your book does a really good job of helping you understand a lot of that and
Yep.
to do it, right? So confident in health. I've got
There
it out
you
again because I've had some
go.
stuff recently. But your book does help like it teaches.
A
Um,
dear friend of ours just informed me she's on read number 4 of it.
really?
Yeah, it's
Gosh,
great. That made me feel so happy. I'm like, that's awesome. Uses it on a daily meditation basis and just takes bites. And I think that that's a really cool way to go through it. You can read it and then really take it and read it because it's a
yeah.
lot and it can change
Yeah.
your mood.
I find myself henpecking through it depending
Yeah,
on what's going on. Like, oh my God, what about this? What about that? And going to different sections. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
All righty. Well, on behalf of Kim and I, thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate your time put into learning and opening your mind on all of the stuff that we bring forward. Take what resonates, toss what doesn't. Maybe hit subscribe, share, and like. And until next time, right? Cosmic
Yeah.
Cos.
Goodbye.